As the challenger, Joe Biden absolutely must debate Donald Trump. As Joe Biden absolutely must not debate Donald Trump. Hey, everybody, I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, and this is Right Angle, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. Gentlemen, I collect these things as a part of my other job for PJ Media, and I'm talking about videos of Joe Biden just with the things he says that are increasingly disconnected from reality. And before we get into the actual subject at hand, which is can, should, must, whatever, Joe Biden show up for the presidential debates this fall, I need to show you the very latest, completely divorced from reality statement from the former vice president, in one of his little video chats last week.
Nurses at Walter Reed Hospital who would bend down and whisper in my ear. Wow. And go home and get me pillows. They would make sure they'd actually, probably nothing ever taught in, you can't do it in the COVID time, but they'd actually breathe in my nostrils to make me move, to get me moving.
Bill, let's go to you first. There was a poll out from Rasmussen last week, I think 2 weeks ago, that said 55% of Americans believe that Joe Biden is suffering from some kind of dementia. I don't know how you get elected with those numbers. When you need to dispel an impression like that, the way to do it would be with a, say, very strong debate performance. But what happens if Joe Biden gets behind a lectern opposite Donald Trump at one of these things and starts talking about the days when they used to wear onions on their belts?
We didn't call him turkey, we called him walking bird, and we had yams basted with gunpowder. Well, first of all, this episode of the nurse blowing his nostrils might have happened this morning, for all we know. Here's the thing, Steve. Well, there's two things. First of all, there's the entire case that Biden will be the nominee, but not the candidate. And I know that sounds like a tricky proposition, but as I understand the rules, if Biden he's not currently the Democratic Party nominee. He's the presumptive nominee, and he won't be the actual nominee until the convention declares him so. But according to the rules of the Democratic Party, my understanding is if he is declared the official candidate and then becomes incapacitated, a new candidate can be essentially selected by the Democratic Party. You don't automatically go to the vice president, candidate, you don't revote, nothing. It's the Democratic National Committee with the advice of and consent of prominent Democrats in Senate and governors and so on. But basically, they get to pick a guy. And I personally think that Joe Biden's mental state is so bad that I happen to think that that's the strategy. I think he's going to be kept in his basement until the convention. They'll trot him out for the convention. He'll read the teleprompter. They'll cut away if they need to. And after he is acclaimed the Democratic Party nominee, a short period of time will go by, and then allegations about Tara Reade will start to be taken seriously, and he'll be asked to quietly step down, and the Democrats will literally select, the DNC will select who they think has got the best chance to beat Trump. I personally think that's the most likely case. But in terms of the debate thing, whenever you have something like this, you've got a situation where the optics in both cases are so terrible and the PR hit is so terrible either way that you really just have to look at this and say which one is going to do the least damage. And I think Joe Biden cooking up some excuse not to debate Donald Trump is going to look awful, and Trump's going to run with it. But that is the least bad option if Biden is in fact going to run in November. There's no way that I can envision him being in a debate with Donald Trump. I just don't see it happening. I really can't imagine it happening, because that'd be the end of the election right there. In 10 minutes, it'd be over. And if 55% of the population now thinks that Biden has some form of dementia, and this is with the Democratic tailwind that you get from the media coverage and the fact that COVID-19 means he hasn't had to be speaking much, everything's scripted, everything's edited, little things like what you just showed are terrifying, but that's just a fragment of what got out. I think what will probably happen is they will probably take some moral stand and say that we're not going to debate Donald Trump because Donald Trump did this, and we refuse to be seen on the same stage as him. I think that's the second most likely case. I think the first most likely case is he won't be the candidate. But his mental decline has continued to accelerate. And if they are stupid enough to risk a debate with Donald Trump, then I don't think the election. I think the election is determined by the end of the first night's debate.
Yeah, I had this sort of dream moment picturing Joe Biden in one of these debates where he goes off on one of his divorce from reality rants, whether it's a nurse inflating his chest through his nose or the onion belts or any other Grandpa Simpson type moment that he's having, even when he's on script these days, where Donald Trump looks at him, looks at the camera and says, "Can anybody tell me what the hell that guy just said?" And then it's game over.
I will have the popcorn ready, and I'll be praying for the corn pop.
Right. Scott, usually when you have a weak candidate, particularly if it's a Democrat, it's the job of the party and particularly of the press to drag him across the finish line. I was going to ask you about the debates, but Bill raises something very interesting here. Is their job perhaps just to drag him as far as the convention? But if they do, and they replace Joe with basically this insider conspiracy, what happens to those millions of Biden voters who just saw their chosen candidate, taken from them? And if it's not Bernie Sanders, where do the Bernie Sanders voters go who are already frustrated that they saw Biden put in their man's place?
And it won't be Bernie.
No, it won't be Bernie.
I frankly think Bill and others who state that same case, and there are many, and I am in the tiny minority, but I frankly think that you're assuming too much and building a case so much so that if Joe Biden comes out and merely looks like a normal, competent individual without any brilliance, without any cleverness, if he just looks okay, it will be considered to be a major triumph because he's proven that he doesn't have dementia. And I think betting the farm on the fact that the guy who's the candidate for the other party is going to have a complete meltdown on national TV is a long shot, and maybe it comes home, and maybe I'm completely wrong about it. I also think that we have a tendency to take these things that you've been collecting, Steve, these snippets of mushmouth Biden, but I'd be interested to find the guy on the other side who's doing the collection of Trump word salad. Because seriously, you could take those clips and play them back to back, and you could conclude that both of them sound like they've kind of lost it for a while. The president speaks in ways that I've never heard any human being speak before.
That's true.
And, for whatever you think of that, I don't think you win the battle based on snippets, basically making the other guy look stupid, because I think both sides can play that. I also think that the idea that the Democrats are just trying to get him into the nomination so that they can handpick somebody has a couple of problems. Number one, it's a conspiracy that's too wide. Too many people have to be involved to make that happen. Number two, he has been circled by sharks throughout his political career. There are a bunch of other Democrats who want to have this nomination and who would speak out if they thought that the potential nominee was a guy who couldn't string two sentences together and was literally slipping into a progressive dementia or Alzheimer's condition. So I really don't think that's going to happen. I guess what we have to ask ourselves is, what do we do if Joe Biden merely looks competent?
Well, that in itself might be an even bigger stretch than just kind of hoping that he loses it at one of these debates. When you think about it, I saw him have exactly one good debate performance before the COVID-19 shut everything down. It was the very last presidential debate. Biden looked more like himself from 2008 that particular night. But keep in mind, this was the first post-pandemic debate. It was the last debate, too. So it was basically no crowd, a smaller panel, social distancing between Biden and the only other candidate in the room, who was, of course, Bernie Sanders. So it was basically the version of the debate that was a preview of his campaign, doing it in very small venues from his basement and all the rest. Where we haven't seen Biden perform well in about probably the last 6 to 9 months is in big crowds where he tends to lose his temper when he's crossed by anybody. I've never seen a candidate yell at his own constituents in the way and insult his own constituents the way that Joe Biden does. And when the other thing he does when he's crossed, if it's by another politician or a reporter, is he loses his temper, and instead of getting insulting, he tends to go off on one of these strange tangents that, again, divorce from reality. If I'm the DNC, I'm really sweating this. On the one hand, the idea of replacing the candidate that was selected by your own constituents has got to be a scary move. On the other hand, if you're a Republican, you don't want to pin all your hopes on a meltdown that may or may not happen, because who knows? I have the feeling that last debate where Joe Biden was actually kind of strong, he's got his own John F. Kennedy-like Dr. Feelgood, who gives him a shot of God knows what right before he has to go on stage. I don't know if you're familiar with JFK and his medical problems, but he was getting injected with all kinds of weird stuff during his days in the White House. So that is maybe the best case scenario for Joe Biden, that he's got a doctor who can pump him full of enough chemicals to make him sound reasonable for 2 hours. If that's the case, then this whole thing is moot. If not, it's going to be Popcorn City, and I'm not sure I know which one, but it's going to be entertaining either way. And that is your right angle on that, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. Remember, content like this needs sponsors like you, so please click on over, become a member. We'd love to have you on board. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.